Today, I'll explore our shared environment through a global lens. Environmental challenges do not stop at national borders, and their effects reach communities, economies, and organizations everywhere. That means responsibility and opportunity are shared as well. Every nation has a role in addressing these issues, and every business operates within and influences the environment around it. The central idea is that environmental responsibility is not separate from business. It is part of the broader environment in which businesses make decisions, create value, and plan for the future. Environmental conditions are not separate from business strategy. They directly influence risk, costs, regulation, and opportunity. Every company depends on natural systems for resources, relies on those systems to absorb waste, and operates within rules shaped by environmental realities. That connection applies whether a business serves one community or markets around the world. The central idea is simple. Every business decision leaves an environmental footprint, and every environmental change can create a business consequence. Understanding that relationship is essential for making resilient, responsible decisions. Climate change is not only an environmental concern, it is reshaping economies, supply chains, and regulatory decisions worldwide. Global temperatures have already risen about 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and could exceed 2 degrees by 2100 without meaningful action. We're also seeing more frequent floods, droughts, wildfires, and hurricanes, creating serious disruptions for infrastructure, agriculture, and logistics. At the same time, rising sea levels threaten coastal cities and low-lying nations, putting real estate, ports, and entire economies at risk. Greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide and methane, trap heat in the atmosphere and drive the greenhouse gas problem. Human industrial activity is the dominant source, which means emissions are closely connected to how businesses produce energy, make products, transport goods, and operate facilities. Looking at emissions by sector gives organizations a clearer picture of where they fit within the broader challenge. It also helps identify the most relevant reduction opportunities, so efforts can focus on the areas with the greatest potential impact. Environmental challenges extend well beyond climate change, and they are closely connected. Plastic pollution threatens marine ecosystems, fisheries, and economies that depend on tourism, with more than 8 million tons entering the oceans each year. Deforestation removes forests that absorb roughly 1/3 of global carbon dioxide emissions, while also accelerating biodiversity loss. Water scarcity adds another layer of risk. 2/3 of the world's population faces severe shortages for at least 1 month annually. Together, these pressures affect food production, manufacturing, livelihoods, and the resilience of communities worldwide. Biodiversity is not just an environmental concern. It is a business dependency. More than half of global GDP depends moderately or highly on nature and its services, including pollination, clean water, fertile soil, and climate regulation. Agriculture alone relies on insect pollination valued at $577 billion annually. Pharmaceuticals draw on plant and marine biodiversity for drug discovery, while tourism depends on healthy natural ecosystems. As species disappear, ecosystems become less resilient, increasing the risks for industries and communities that rely on them. The global policy landscape has evolved through a series of agreements that increasingly shape business regulation and strategy. The Montreal Protocol in 1987 demonstrated that coordinated action could phase out ozone-depleting substances. Kyoto, in 1997, introduced binding emissions targets and established a foundation for carbon accounting. The 2015 Paris Agreement broadened climate commitments worldwide, accelerating national legislation and corporate net zero pledges. Most recently, the 2022 Kunming-Montreal Framework set the 30 by 30 biodiversity goal, with major implications for land use and supply chain sourcing. Environmental issues create concrete operational and financial consequences across every industry. 4 categories of environmental business risk are especially important. Transition risk as markets and business models change. Reputational risk when public trust or investor confidence declines. Regulatory risk, including potential penalties. And physical risk from environmental conditions that disrupt operations. Companies that fail to assess and manage these exposures may face higher capital costs and reduce investor confidence. ESG frameworks now influence more than $35 trillion in global investment decisions, making environmental risk a business priority, not just a sustainability concern. Corporate environmental responsibility is moving from broad commitments to concrete business practices. Clean energy is one major example, with companies such as Apple, Google, and IKEA shifting toward renewable power to reduce emissions and long-term costs. Circular economy models address waste earlier by designing products for reuse, repair, and recycling. At the same time, thousands of companies are setting science-based targets aligned with the Paris Agreement. Finally, reporting requirements, including the SEC and CSRD, are making environmental risks and performance more visible and accountable. The business case for environmental action is increasingly clear. The low-carbon transition is estimated to create $26 trillion in global economic benefit through 2030. At the same time, 65% of consumers prefer purpose-driven, environmentally responsible brands, while ESG-focused companies have outperformed traditional indices over 10-year periods, reflected here as a 3x investor return advantage. Sustainability is no longer simply a cost center. It can drive innovation, strengthen brand equity, attract talent and investment, retain customers, and help businesses navigate regulatory change. The key takeaways are clear. Environmental responsibility is shared. Climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss affect every sector. These challenges also create measurable physical, regulatory, reputational, and transition risks. Finally, proactive action can strengthen resilience, improve access to capital, and create lasting competitive advantage.